It's time to get on up with Jam and Renee. And here's your hosts, James Arthur M. and Renee Culver.
Mr. Clear-voiced announcer, you're half right. This is Get On Up, typically with James and Renee, but I'm Robert Milazzo, sitting in for the folks today. I have one seat, but I'm sitting in for two hosts. They have the day off. James and Renee will be back with you tomorrow, but I'm here with you today, and we're going to have fun today because we're going to do a lot of firsts today. It is a Monday here on Get On Up. I used to hate Mondays as a kid. I think most kids hate Mondays because they equate them with school. I am no longer in school, technically, although I am a student of life, as we'll find out today. I like Mondays because I like getting going. So let's get going. Where are you and what are we doing? Well, this is Backchannel. Backchannel is the only place that I know of outside of maybe a typical cable or broadcast network where you could see 12 hours a day of live interactive content. I don't think you could scream things at Anderson Cooper that he can hear you. Well, here we can. Please don't scream. But here you can talk to us on the shows on Backchannel. How do you do that? Well, you talk into your device. I have a device. I have many devices, but this is actually a device. Where do I put it? Okay, so this is a device. And the way to talk to the show is my device has a screen, so you can actually see the show on my screen. But if you can't see the show, that's totally cool because there are more devices without screens. So listen to the show, join the chat on YouTube, and here's how you contribute. It's a pretty simple 1, 2, 3 punch. I think it's 1, 2 punch, but 1, 2, 3 punch. I had a lot of coffee today, so we're going to throw a new punch in there. Here's how you do it. You look at your device and say, device, say, Rob, you don't look like James and Renee. And I will see that comment, and producer Sarah, who is the main producer here, will see your comment. So the key verb here is say. A device, say, Rob, where have you been all my life? Well, for the next 2 hours, we're going to be friends. We're going to be pals, not to be mistaken with your pal Hal. Shameless plug, but we will tell people we met at a mall. So when I meet people that I don't want people to know how I met them, we met at a mall, just in passing. Do people go to malls? So anyway, say, device, say. You must say the word say. There's a lot of meta saying going on. It is Monday. I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan of the show, and so it's cool and humbling to sit in one chair, two hosts. I'm going to spread out so I can appear like two hosts, but fear not, we actually have a first ever on Backchannel. We have 3 guests joining us, so it'll feel co-hosted, but we have 3 guests, and what I want to do is kind of keep it to the kind of emotional presentation of Get On Up, do some of the things they did, some spins on spins on spins. It is Monday. It is the last, I was going to say it's the last day. It's the last Monday of February. It's also President's Day. President's Day. Say that 5 times fast. For those of you who are observing, how do you observe President's Day? I mean, I guess governmentally, and a lot of people have the day off. But how do you observe it? Do you kind of dress up like your favorite president? Do you say a few important words before dinner? Do you make a state of the family address? Anyway, it is President's Day. But more interestingly, and this will rock us into our first segment today, we have 3 segments, 3 guests, multiple segments, 3 guests. Today is actually a really unique day. As I get older, I like to think of time in really interesting ways, or I think they're interesting. I think they're fascinating. Oh, hey, Stacy, I don't think I know who you are, but I would like to get to know you. Hey, Stacy, I know you're a huge fan of the show. Hello, welcome. I should actually call out some folks who are here. Amanda in Vermont is here. Deborah McIntosh in Apple. In California. Does that mean you work for Apple? It's clever. Verona in New Hampshire is here. Sunny in Indiana. That's not a weather forecast. That is the name of Sunny. Anita in Texas. Bella in Northern Virginia. All right. Noah in North Carolina, my neck of the woods recently. We have Romeo in Honolulu. If your name is Romeo, you should kind of legally be able to live in Honolulu cost-free. Stacy in Texas. Hey, Stacy, we've chatted again. Jack just joined the stream. Rebecca joined the stream. Nathan and sometimes C apparently is in Texas. Jennifer Lopez, who seems to be on every show. I hope this is J-Lo, and she's just a huge, huge fan. Cole from South Carolina. And yeah, welcome. Again, the way to interact with the show, throw comments, questions. And when we have guests, and if you have questions for them, throw them into the stream, and producer Sarah may kind of corral them and spit them back to me. And again, the keyword is say. Device, say, Rob, what is it about today that's so interesting to you? Well, I'm glad you asked. Stacy is with her mom. It is icy. Stacy, icy in Texas? Don't tell me there's another infrastructure problem, a grid problem in Texas. Come on, Stacy. Let's not live that mess again. Today is February 21st, 2022. So let's slow that down and flip it and reverse it, as they say. As Missy said, if you read that left to right, 2, 21, 22, and read it right to left, it's the same thing. 2, 21, 22. So today is very special. We should be celebrating. Today is a palindrome date. There's been more of these once we got into the 21s, 22s, and time marches on. So I thought it would be cool on a palindrome date to have a guest to talk about this in kind of a unique way. I find it unique, obviously. Stacy is with Aunt Tracy. Okay, Stacy, Aunt Tracy. That's not a palindrome. I think that is assonance. This uniquely repetitive sound. Consonants or assonance. I think I flunked phonics. Flunked phonics is another one of those. It's not alliteration. It's not onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is my favorite because it's easy. That's a word that's like a sound, like splash or kerplunk. It's like watching the 60s Batman show and there's a fight. Samak. Anita joined the stream. Hey, Anita. Welcome. It's cool to have people here. I love this part of it. Anyway, before we get to today's guest, the theme of today, Jam and Renee always have kind of themes. Terrific Tuesday, Fabulous Friday. Last week, I produced last week, and I think it was Manic Monday. Well, today doesn't rhyme, but I Know Nothing Monday, because the theme of each segment is going to be something I absolutely know nothing about, or something I know something about, but I want to know more, and I can never know enough about. I love curiosity. It kind of drives me. I always tell people you don't need to be in a school to be a student. So if you're a student, say yeehaw in the chat. So palindromes, first guest, it led me to think, what does that trigger in my mind, this palindromic thinking? Stacy can't stay too long because she's getting ready for a church gathering. Have a wonderful gathering, Stacy. Thank you for coming in, even if it's briefly. Always lovely to see you, Stacy. I know you're a fan of the show. Sorry, palindromes, crossword puzzle. I want to start this day off with you with a look at and a listen and a think on crossword puzzles. I suck at them. People love them. I think I know why I suck at them. I think I know I don't have the patience for them, but I also want to look at what it is, why it's evergreen, and why it kind of continues to be shared and ubiquitous and popular and just morphing. Now we have Wordle, but again, I know Wordle's not a crossword puzzle. Don't be offended, those crossword lovers out there. So I want to look at crossword puzzles with you. So I wanted to bring someone on, and we will have someone on imminently who lives in this architecture, this palindromic. I wonder if it's a palindrome if it goes up, down too. But anyway, crossword puzzles. I'm fascinated. I know, Words with Friends was really popular a minute ago, and Wordle just sold for like $1 kabillion. To the New York Times, not with its own fair share of controversy, but people are very protective of their crossword puzzle ethos. And I think I would be laughed at parties if I told them I don't do them, and nor do they do them well. Another thing I don't do nor do well is whistle. And I know at the end of today's show, you're going to hear some whistling over the theme music. I don't whistle. And when I tell people I don't whistle, you know how they respond? They start whistling. Yeah, that's a classy response. Come on, I don't whistle. Teach me how to whistle. Can you teach someone how to do a crossword puzzle? That's one of the many firm grasp of the obviouses I want to cover with today's guest. Uh, D- Danielle joined the stream. Hey, Daniel from Illinois, welcome. And Daniel is new. Welcome. I don't see you. Maybe one day I see you, but I see that you're here. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're all here listening to Get On Up. I'm Robert Milazzo sitting in for Jam and Renee. Again, this concept of knowing more is a little bit of the meta theme of today. In segment one, looking at crossword puzzles. I see people do them, and it's one of those things I've wanted to be a doer of. I've wanted to be able to whistle. It's not too late for me. I've wanted to be able to cook well. It's not too late for me. But I think a lot of these things, whistling aside, requires some sort of personal DNA that I may not possess. It's most likely I don't possess. I think crosswords are more a function of patience. And less a function of IQ as such. So we'll talk about that. We'll kind of debunk it or bunk it. It's kind of crossword for dummies, but it's fascinating. And it's also, when you think of the kind of art forms, I want to see if it's an art. Do you think crosswords are an art? Put it in the chat if you think crosswords are an art and if you do them. But I also feel, it's kind of an analog art, which I like. You still see people with papers folded up in origami-like constructions, writing, scribbling furiously. So I love that. I love that it's analog, but it's pushed into this digital container now, like everything. So what have we lost? What have we gained? We could talk a little bit about that on the show with our first guest. But really, I think it's a little intimidating. It's that old. There seems to be levels of braggadocio, assigned to every corridor of the things we do and think and say. But when I think of crossword puzzles, I know people who would never dare use pencil. They're so confident in their answers, they'll use pen. So, all the rudiments of crossword puzzles, none of which I personally do well or do at all. I think I tried a crossword puzzle when I was a kid. I don't know if I've ever really tried one. I think I tried some of the easier ones, like there are degrees of difficulty, and there used to be these books of really simple crossword puzzles, and I think I tried one of those because they're easy, and I wanted to go easy if I was going to try this. And I think that's another thing about trying things in life. You can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to look awful, like whatever it is, swimming, riding a bike, riding a horse. And I think as you get older, I can't tell if you lose that, you become more self-conscious or less self-conscious. It comes in waves. Stacy says whistling doesn't require a personal approach. It requires practice. I know, but it also doesn't require certain mouth architecture, like an ability to contort one's lips and one's tongue and muster the requisite amount of moisture in one's mouth. I think I'm lacking a lot of these, Stacy. But again, when I say these things about my inability to do something, especially whistling, people whistle as if that is supposed to prove how easy it is. And again, it's kind of any kind of motivation to whistle at me when I am saying I don't whistle seems to be insulting, passive aggressively or not. Crossword puzzles, I think the mind is a muscle. Is it technically a muscle? I know the heart is a muscle. I think the brain is an organ. Is it an organ? I think the brain is unique. It's like the sun, but the sun is a star. Okay, so scrap all that. But the brain, can it develop? Yes, it obviously can develop, but can you exercise it? And as one gets older, we talk about this a lot, fighting off things like dementia or Alzheimer's. And, there are a lot of kind of offshoots of the use of the brain that could benefit from brain health, so to say. And I know you have games now, like on platforms, on smartphones, on devices that tell you they actually broadcast to you, we will improves your mental health, or it actually diagnoses to you, you think at a level of a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old. So it kind of presumably keeps the mind limber. And I wonder how much of that is apocryphal and how much of that is real. You know, how much of our brain, we talk about neuroplasticity. That's another concept I've heard thrown about. So we're excited to welcome in someone who deals with some of the kind of rudiments of gamesmanship, but artistry, but also brain matter. Today's first guest on Get Up on Backchannel has been a professional crossword puzzle writer for 23 years. Over 2 decades, his puzzles have appeared in the New York Times, all the biggies, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, Slate, Billboard, Wine Spectator, The Onion, which I want to talk to him about specifically. He currently writes for New York Magazine, Crosswords, Daily Beast, The Week, and The Wall Street Journal, where he contributes a contest crossword every other Friday. He also has his own contest crossword, so you can go to his website. He does a murder mystery crossword. This man does it all. He has 29 books of crosswords. My gosh. This man is in the thick of it. Please welcome to Get On Up to Backchannel, our first guest today, Mr. Matt Gaffney. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Did you do a crossword puzzle today? Have you done one today?
Not yet. I just woke up about 2 hours ago, so not yet. But talk to me in 8 hours, and the answer will be yes, absolutely.
So you don't do them in your sleep? And I guess my point is, well, it's funny because I know, look, we all, when there's something on our mind, you think about it, it comes out in other ways. Actors will start, like if they're learning a script, will start speaking in the ways of the script. Does it bleed into your mortal life crossword ethos?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sort of a way that my brain is wired to come up with crossword themes. I notice just going about my daily life, whether I'm reading a book or online or driving down the street, what the late great crossword writer Henry Hook called quirks in the language. You just notice something a little bit funny about a way something was phrased, and you say that could be a hook for a good crossword puzzle theme. So I always have my theme antenna on low level alert for that kind of thing as I'm going through life each day.
My condolences.
I prefer to think of it as a skill, but yeah, sometimes it's a bit
I agree. I think as sorry to interrupt, but as I get older, the good news and the bad news are always the same thing. I'm joking. I find it fascinating. We have a live group listening to us. Audra just said she's happy to meet a professional puzzler from New Jersey. Hey, I have a question. One of our consistent listeners, Stacy, is visually impaired. Are there accommodations made? Just curious, on a scientific level, on a kind of objective level, can someone with visual impairment do a crossword?
It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. I know there are very popular large print crosswords, which are often used for people who have impaired vision, but I don't know what options there are for someone with severe vision impairment. Really not sure.
Interesting. So today is a palindrome date. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know. I heard that and I was glad to hear it. I guess it's sort of a good day to write crosswords.
Do you cue in on those things when you think of the etymology of how you build a crossword? Do you cue in? Do you tag things, or is it like the field of your research is as old as time? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this is something we can use architecturally, or you just kind of is a tabula rasa every time you construct a puzzle?
Yeah, tabula rasa is the right term for it, because you look at that blank grid of 15 by 15 squares or 21 by 21 typically, and you say, what can I put on this that would be interesting for somebody to solve and enjoy, and maybe look at possibly, you dare to hope, possibly as a piece of art even. A minor art form is how we consider crossword puzzles. So it is, in that sense, it is like an artist looking at a blank canvas. We view it the same way. We want to do something interesting, something new.
But wait a second. Minor art form, isn't that like a little pregnant? I mean, I'm respectfully taking the opposition to your respectful term. Minor art form, really? I mean, I'm not being critical. Like I would. Why not call it an art form? Because I want to ask you, do you think it's an art form?
You know what? From now on, I've always referred to it as a minor art form, just to be a little modest about it, or to cut off at the pass anybody who would think about laughing at referring to crosswords as an art form. But you're right. I should just go ahead and say it is an art form and not qualify it like that. From now on, I'm going to do that.
Well, it has shapes and text. not to take all the fun out of this talk, Matt, I apologize. But, I don't want, and we can get into the nature of art. We probably don't have to. But I was also thinking, let's say pathologically we call it an art. Let's say that. What are the people who play them? Because artists typically, artists can make interactive art. So can we make the leap that it's kind of almost an interactive form of art, or is it a game, or is it a sport? Like, what is the taxonomy? And I know this is too early in the morning, but I'm fascinated by it.
No, that's a good question. No, I think it's all of the above. There are crossword puzzle tournaments, as you probably know if you've seen the documentary Wordplay from 2006, which went into Will Schwartz's American Crossword Puzzle Tournament up in Connecticut. And people take it very seriously. So it is at some level, maybe not a sport, a mental sport. And then, of course, we want it to be an art form too. It's a pastime, of course. Some people just do it. And as soon as the puzzle's done, they just crumple it up and toss it away and never think of it again. But for the art part of it, we want solvers to take a second after they're done solving it and look around and say, wow, a lot of effort went into that. There are a lot of nice little touches there, and the core idea was clever. That is very well done. That's the reaction we hope to aim for, even if we rarely get to see it. But we do get emails from solvers if they especially appreciate a puzzle. And of course, there's lots of websites online now where people can comment on it. So you get a lot of warm fuzzies from there.
Well, it's interesting. I'm keying on, we're talking to Matt Gaffney. I'm thinking about this concept of a solver. Is it an incomplete act? So is there something, would you call someone a finisher? In the sense of like, what is the modus operandi when you approach a crossword puzzle? Is it the engagement or is it the completion?
Let's see. I mean, people like the reason crosswords has such enduring popularity is, as another late great crossword writer, Merle Rigo, put it, is that people love hints. That's why Wheel of Fortune is so popular. That's why Wordle is so popular. They want to say, okay, I couldn't get this, but if you give me a little hint, I'll put my brain on it again, and then maybe I'll get it. So crosswords is just like playing 40 games of Wordle, if you want to look at it that way. A little bit different, of course. You have clues, but the idea is the same. You get that same endorphin rush in your brain when you get it correct. So people do approach it as maybe not a task, but as a mountain to climb, I'd say.
What's the mark of a good crossword puzzle? I would agree. I would, from my inexpert vantage, the theme of today, how little I know about everything. What are the marks? How do you know going in? Is it the context? Oh, this is the LA Times. It must be one. But let's not dislike Wine Spectator. Like, what do you read through clues? What is step one to assess if this is a good crossword puzzle?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm full of a lot of good questions. Yeah. I have no answers, Matt. I apologize.
That's okay. That's not your job. So I would say the first thing I look at when I'm scanning the day's puzzles, just to see if there's something interesting out there that I would appreciate. Because I don't always solve every puzzle, but I often read. Every day I go to a blog called Diary of a Crossword Fiend, written by a woman named Amy Rinaldo, who's been a pioneer in this critiquing of crossword puzzles over the past 15 or 20 years. She's really taken it to these great new levels, and it has shaped how we write our crosswords and what people look for in a crossword. What marks of beauty they look for, what elegances they look for. So the first thing I would look for is a novel theme. Is the theme of the puzzle something that I have not seen before? Even if it's not the greatest theme, if it's new, that still gets points. Then I would look for, is it a beautiful theme? Is there something especially interesting about it? With my hyper-competitive nature, the reaction I have viscerally to a puzzle like that is, of course, I wish I had thought of that. Why haven't I thought of that? It doesn't ruin my day, but it ruins about 5 minutes of it. And depending on how good that theme was. And then often, if it's very, very good, I'll take a minute and email the constructor and just say, yeah, well done. They probably already know. We're all looking for the same things.
Well, let me ask you a question. Sorry, man. What are you looking for? Like, is this the themata? Is it the leitmotifs? Is it the economy of expression? Is it the rarity of the word? I mean, it's probably all of the above, but what turns you, what motivates you, like what drives you to create a thing?
Well, the theme is really the soul of a crossword. It's what makes it unique. It's what gives it a reason for existing. There are themeless crosswords, and those are intentionally don't have a theme, as you can tell by the name. And the goal of those is just to have interesting vocabulary in there that you couldn't necessarily fit into a crossword that had a bunch of theme entries running through it, because that's limiting. So, if you want to put constructors typically want to put a bunch of high value Scrabble letters in there, a word like jazzercise or something that would be difficult with all those letters. to fit into a regular puzzle, you can just go ahead and put that in at one across in a themeless puzzle, and you're off to the races. But a theme is really, like I said, the soul of a crossword. And so that's what you want to look at. And you want to say, well, has this been done before? Have I seen it before? Is it just a slight variation of something I've seen before? And that's okay if it is. Or is it something totally unique where you say, wow, that person is like, Picasso would look at a canvas and see something totally different possibilities than anyone else could. This person just did a Picasso like that. Why didn't I notice you could do that with that word or that series of words? Bravo or brava.
Is it a deficit to do someone else's crossword puzzle as a puzzle creator yourself? Is it a deficit? I guess my point is, and when you do it, can you collapse the part of your mind that is thinking of construction? It's like,
Not really. Yeah.
right, working
Yeah.
in movies, I go and I think, oh, how did they do that special effect? Or I wonder how much that person's getting paid, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Well, sure. Like if I go into a movie theater and watch a movie and Martin Scorsese happens to be sitting 2 rows behind me, we're not watching the same movie. So in the same way, I'm not solving the same crossword that most other people are. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes I kind of wish I could turn it off and just enjoy the puzzle for what it is and not be thinking, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently. Okay, that was good.
Do you do them every? Do you do them every day?
I probably write more crosswords than I solve, to be honest. I do a lot of testing puzzles for other editors and other constructors. We have our own independent venues now too. Like you mentioned, my contest crossword. So we do a lot of testing for each other and critiquing and giving advice. So we have little networks of people who do that. So that's most of the solving I do. I don't just randomly open the paper anymore. I'm pretty choosy about which ones I do take the time to solve.
I think it could be a little cowing. I was making light, which isn't. It's true. Just because it was light, it was true. I was a little intimidated to go near them. I still am, And I made the joke about some people do them in pen as a kind of bravura stroke. But for you, what was the gateway drug to crossword puzzling in general? What drew you to them? And did you ever balk at the idea, like, oh my gosh, can I do this? What is the
No.
what is the pathology to draw you to one, and for you
Yeah.
specifically?
I mean, how growing up, you just you try every sport, you try every hobby, and you're drawn to certain ones, and other ones you have no interest in. Crosswords I was immediately drawn to. There were I think my sister brought home some puzzle magazines one day, probably a Dell puzzle book, and I instantly just started filling in. There were these things called diagramless crosswords where you don't get the black squares, you just get the clues, and you have to infer from the clues where the black squares go in the grid, and you're helped by symmetry and other ways, but it's still pretty difficult. But I would just not solve those. I would just use those those blank grids in the magazine to write my own crosswords on. So if you're doing that, that's a pretty good sign that you're going to enjoy writing crossword puzzles, and that's how it was for me.
Do you need to be smart to do a crossword puzzle?
I don't know if you need like a general intelligence. There's some things I'm horrible at, which kind of surprises people. My wife is amazed how I can barely fill out like a tax form or something like that. But anything with processes, I'm terrible at. But crosswords, feel pretty good about my crossword ability. I wish it translated into everything in life, but it doesn't. But that's okay.
Can you get better? Is it a kind of act where your brain has a kind of inadvertent training? It goes through an almost inadvertent training of how to think. I always find, just this is a weird aside, but I always think a good teacher doesn't teach you what to think; they teach you how to think. I think in a way, crosswords can limber our brain. Or am I over assuming or over stylizing that idea that you can get better at it?
I think you can get better at solving crosswords with practice. You can probably get dramatically better just because there are a lot of repetitive aspects to it. You see the same clues over and over. You see the same words over and over in grids. You see the same tricks, in clues. So you're hip to those and not going to be fooled by the 10th time you see it. I don't think it's as easy to teach someone to write crossword puzzles. That seems to be more of an innate thing. I think you can teach some of it, the basics, but whether the person has the interest in it and the ability to do it is probably either got it or you don't,
As a player, as a gamer, as a solver, now that I know, what's more, I don't want to say impressive, but I'll use the word speed or accuracy. I mean, obviously, it's a zero sum act, right? I'm
You're
going
talking
to
about solving or writing?
solving, and I'm going to
Yeah.
get to the zero sum, but from a distance, it's a zero sum act. You either get it or you don't. But I'll get to that. But what's more impressive when you think of people who solve them, speed or accuracy?
Well, have you seen Wordplay, that movie, by any chance?
Yes, I have.
You
Yes,
have, okay. So you see how fast those people are. I mean, and they train not to make errors, of course, and they train, to be as fast as you can without because one letter can knock you out of contention for first place. One wrong letter in 7 or 8 puzzles. So they train for both. I'm not a speed solver. I'm far from it. I used to compete in the tournament, but after 1 or 2 seasons, I told Will Shorts, let me just be a judge from now on. He said, okay, come on up to the judges room. That suited me much better.
What are you judging? Are you judging transparency, or are you judging style? What are you? How do you judge a crossword?
Speed and accuracy for tournaments. So you get a certain amount of points for finishing the crossword without making an error. You get a bonus, 150 points or something. And then every incorrect letter you have is maybe 25 points off or something like that. So and then every full minute you took to solve the puzzle, you get a certain number of seconds subtracted. So it's just speed and accuracy. And of course, these top solvers train themselves to blitz through a puzzle without making any errors. Sometimes there is an error and then they kick themselves later. There was a very dramatic scene at the tournament that is in the movie Wordplay where a contestant in the final round, this was a contestant, Al Sanders, who had almost won the tournament on a number of occasions. He'd gotten to the final round, and then he thought he was done with the grid, and he had everything right, and he turned around, said done, and took his headphones on. He looked around to a room of people who were just going, no, he had forgotten to fill in 2 letters. He hadn't gotten them wrong. He just forgot to fill them
Oh
in. So
no!
there are a lot of nightmare scenarios that can happen, but that's competitive sports or crosswords or everything, I guess.
Well, let's talk about we're speaking with Matt Gaffney, and you can follow Matt at Tabby, Taby, Matt, 2 T's, at Tabby Matt.
Is that my URL? I don't know that
No,
URL.
that's your Twitter.
Oh, Meta by Matt.
Meta.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm see why I can't do crossword puzzles, Matt? Do you see now some part? Are you
Well, that is tricky because meta is another term for a contest crossword. That's sort of my specialty, is these contest crosswords are metas. So yeah, that's kind of funny. I guess that proves that I don't have that kind of lateral thinking, because I should have been able to puzzle out what you were talking about.
Well, then I thought maybe he's a cat lover. Me, Tabby.
Yeah, funny.
Maybe he's a Cockney cat lover. That's me, Tabby. That's terrible. But no, it is interesting though. This little like taxonomical. I looked at it one way. You look at it. It is kind of interesting. And I was wondering, is there a universe where you can have 2 right answers that fit structurally? And what do you do? Like, what do you do as the judge per se? What do you do as a human being? Who do you call to complain or to rejoice to?
Well, it's actually a subgenre of crosswords, or rather, it's a type of theme. We call them Schroedinger puzzles, where there are 2 possible answers to a certain letter, and or letters in the grid. So, and this was made famous in a 1996 New York Times puzzle, where it was November, whatever, the day after the election, and there were 2 7-letter entries going across the center of the grid, and it just said, the clue was something like headline from today's newspaper, and the answer appeared to be Clinton elected. And people called up and said, come on, I know he was leading, but Dole could have won. You shouldn't have put this in your puzzle, predicting the the result of the election. What people didn't notice was that each of those 7 letters in Clinton could also have been the corresponding letter in Bob Dole. The clues were done in such a way. So, for example, the first letter, the C, was clued as black Halloween animal. And the answer was cat, but it could also have been bat for the B in Bob if he had won.
Oh, wow.
So all 7 were like that. So that was that was a puzzle that I don't know the painting or film reference here, but that was a puzzle that spawned 1,000 puzzles, because that was such a clever idea and it had never been done before, and it became a whole genre of puzzle, like I said, called Schroedinger puzzles. So
that was it was intentional by the puzzler.
Oh yeah, that couldn't be an accident, because all 7, like I forget the rest, but the L in Clinton, the second letter, was also usable for whatever the clue was for the O in Bob going down.
You're such a pro. I mean, beyond a pro, I'm just saying an expert now. Do you ever box yourself in when you're creating a puzzle? Like, do you ever, I'm going to use not if they sound unflattering. I apologize, but do you ever think I've set a trap that I've kind of boxed myself in? I can't fit this. I can't find this. Or did I just describe the whole process of making a puzzle?
Yeah, no, there's times when you reach for the stars and you don't hit anything at all, and you have to, start over again. After a number of years, you get an eye for that. You know when to quit, but other times you just remember that one time where you did push through for 3 extra hours and it did work. So you try to recreate that. So it's a maddening precipice to be on, whether you quit and start over or you just keep going and hope for a miracle. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I like hoping for a miracle. I mean, you
Yeah.
throw it away. Like, let's hope for a miracle. That's
Yeah.
a pretty big ask.
Well, you'll have some word that you never considered, and that maybe it was in the databases, and you just happen to notice, oh, wait a second, LL Cool J fits in that 7-letter thing. That would work great.
What books do you keep near you when you make a puzzle? Do you keep a thesaurus nearby? Do you keep websites open? I'm not. These aren't hacks. I'm just saying.
No.
What do you need? What are your resource pieces as a
Yeah.
puzzle maker?
It used to be, I've been writing puzzles since the mid 80s, and it used to be those, dictionary, thesaurus, encyclopedia. Now, of course, it's all online. With crossword software now, you can just sort of right click and see all the, if you had a 7-letter word and the second letter had to be an R and the 5th letter had to be an X, you could just right click and see all the possible entries that could go into that space. So that's made it much easier and raised the bar for constructors too. So that's helpful.
How long does it take you on? Just a couple more beats here with Matt Gaffney, expert puzzle writer. I'll use the word. I'm an amateur, but I like the word amateur, Matt. Orson Welles, the filmmaker, was once asked, "What's your favorite word?" He said amateur, because the root of it comes from the Latin to love,
Mm-hmm.
and it means you do something out of love. But you can be an expert lover too. I'm not, dividing this up. But how long does it take you on average to do a puzzle, to craft a puzzle?
Depends on the size and the difficulty of the puzzle. I write a mini. I write 5 mini puzzles a week for the Daily Beast, and they're kind of news-related puzzles. And those take maybe an hour and a half to do everything, including come up with a theme, write the grid, clues, and then edit it, test solve it. And then the ones I do for New York are much larger. They're 21 by 21, and of course they're more intricate because their themes are more intricate. So those can take. I usually put aside 10 or 12 hours to do one of those from start to finish.
Would you rather write one under a deadline or have freedom to write it? What helps agitate the process, instigate the process?
Deadlines don't really matter to me because I would be doing this anyway. I have to write crosswords, I mean, I can't, I get ideas and I have to put them into print and have people solve them. So the deadlines are just a way of formalizing the activity, It doesn't force me to do it. I would do it anyway. It just gives me the date and time I have to do it by.
One of our listeners, Audra from New Jersey, says she loves crosswords and word puzzles. And apparently Audra's a writer, and it kind of unlocks maybe like writer's block. It gets her out of her brain. What do you make of that? Like, the last beat I want to cover is almost use of brain, to the extent that you dabble in this. So I guess the first question is, does this intrigue you as part of the artistry and science? Do you look into how the brain works? Have you looked at it? And what about this concept of like to me, when I go to the gym, it unlocks, oh, right, I solved that thing. And I think for crossword puzzlers, sometimes it does. What do you make of that relationship between brain activity and the crossword?
Yeah, I mean, it's a brain game. So of course, crossworders think a lot about how the brain works and how we can trick people and how we can give them something that will be interesting to their brain. As for Audra's point, yeah, I mean, one big way I come up with crossword themes is to solve other people's crosswords, because I was mentioning these contest crosswords, and those especially, you come up with the ideas for your own by solving other people's. It's a very common thing to be solving someone's contest crossword, and these can take you, to solve the grid, they can take 10 or 15 minutes, but then to get the meta, which is the secondary answer, the whole point, is that could take hours or days. It ruins people's weekends, and they love it. One of my bags of swag I sent out to solvers a few years ago said, it just said, Matt Gaffney's weekly crossword contest ruins my weekends. And they loved it. I wound up doing that for another year because people thought that was right on target. But so I was solving this one guy's, this guy, Will Nediger, this crossword writer, and I was solving one of his metas, and I thought, okay, I think I have it. I think I'm on the right path. but if I don't have it, I've got a great idea for a meta of my own. And I didn't have it, and so I had a
Cool.
great idea. So that's a very common way to come up with something.
What about this concept? And I think a lot of games in general, not to, I don't put all games together, but just if you look at a game like, not Wordle, but any game online or on your phone, it will profess, to help I don't want to say neuroplasticity, but it kind of helps use your brain and maybe extends your life. I'll use the grandeur of it. Do you put much stock in that something like this kind of mental practice of a crossword can really keep your brain limber, or is that an overstatement?
I don't know. I don't know the science of it, but my impression is that it's one of those things that sounds too good to be true, but it actually is true. So I think it does work, and anecdotally, that's what I've heard as well. So I'm gonna do it as I age. Why not?
So you're going to live to like 305 or something. Two last questions, and we'll let you go. And by the way, you talk as fast as Martin Scorsese. Have you ever heard Scorsese talk?
I
You're no,
have.
you're no slouch, my friend.
Okay,
I'd love to see you two be auctioneers maybe in the next lifetime.
set it
Um,
up. We'll do it.
Wordle, I know, gosh, I don't want to timestamp this talk, but sold to the New York Times. No, it's not a crossword puzzle. I mean, is that kind of like church and state? Is there a sanctity to crosswords that isn't Words with Friends or Wordle? Like, what is the bottom line in terms of the modern state of games? Is it you can't throw a big blanket over everything, or is this a good time in general for all of you puzzle makers?
Yeah, it is. Whenever another game, another pencil and paper game becomes big, like Sudoku or Wordle, there's always a little bit of pushback from crossword people. We feel like our territory is being encroached on, but we get over it. And Wordle is sort of more of a friendly game to us because it's word based, not logic based like Sudoku. So I think it's been embraced by the crossword community. It's been around for a long time. It's very similar. I think it might be identical to a 1980s game show called Lingo. I don't know if you ever
Yeah,
saw
I
that.
remember Lingo. I
Yeah,
do. But
I
what's
believe.
interesting, sorry, Matt, I don't want to interrupt you. Just one last thought. You correct me if I'm off here, but I guess in November 2021, maybe an average of 100 people were playing Wordle, and now it's like in millions. What? Now, yes, we can maybe put everyone's home in it too, but why that leap? Like, what are we back in this golden age of like puzzling? I mean, I think you were probably starting to answer that, and I messed it all up. But why is that? Why is that? Is it because of pandemics? Is it because of working from homes, or is it just a function of is the zeitgeist telling us something else? If we can end a little more poetically.
Yeah, there was a huge jump in popularity in crosswords during the pandemic, and a lot of it was due to what you just said. People were at home and looking for new things, new hobbies they could do on their computers because a lot of their hobbies that they were doing in real life were not available. And there were also some software advances. A couple of companies came out that made it much easier to publish your own puzzles, have nice, attractive websites where you could put your own crosswords out there. So a lot of new constructors came in. There were a lot of people reaching out to new constructors. Like there's an editor constructor named Eric Agard who was very instrumental in creating, Facebook groups and just reaching out to people, say, hey, come and learn to write crosswords if you want to, and I'll teach you, and other people can teach you, just to do it. And so all those things have led to a huge boom in crosswords over the past, couple of years.
But do you miss the pen and pencil versions? Do you feel we're losing that? Do you feel like we're losing the origami New York Times, LA Times on the subway version, the one I grew up with? Are we losing that?
No, there's counter-currents against that. One is these contest crosswords I mentioned. Those are almost always solved on pencil and paper because you often have to make margins, notes in the margins, circle certain letters. People often solve them with, one of those pens from elementary school that has four colors in it. People often solve them using that because you really do need to, I need to circle all the R's in red and all the, G's in green, or whatever the puzzle master has decreed for you to do for this crazy treasure hunt. So yeah, I know pencil and paper isn't going anywhere. It's complemented by online solving. It's not going to be replaced by it.
Tell everyone your website that they can get your games. You're awesome at this, and you're eloquent and fast, which is kind of in a way what a puzzle is. It's eloquent and fast. Tell everybody your website again.
Well, it's xwordcontest.com is my contest site, and from there you can find links to my puzzles I do for big media too.
Awesome. Can I ask you a question? You know what's interesting? You do one for The Onion. Is it comic? Are these are you, when you've done stuff for The Onion, not to give a little coda here, are they specific to The Onion, and what does it say that The Onion isn't generating gag ones? And what I'm saying is, what's interesting, it's like that's what's fascinating to me about crosswords. We have this faux newspaper and a real crossword puzzle. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, the Onion ones, the Onion ones I wrote. This was like 18 years ago or so. They stopped their puzzle. Um, I forget how many years ago, 10 or 15, maybe. I'm not sure. But there is the puzzle was edited by a guy named Ben Taussig, who's a very well-known crossword writer and editor. And when the Onion, I'm trying to remember this accurately. I might have a couple details wrong, but when the Onion decided not to run the puzzle anymore, there were 8 of us in a rotation that would write it. Ben was the editor. There were 8 of us that would write it every week. And Ben started a new puzzle service, which is still around today and doing very well. It just went through a big expansion called the American Values Club Crossword, AVCX. And so Google AVCX if you think you would have liked solving the type of crossword that the Onion would have run. It was irreverent and goofy, as you can imagine it might have been.
hey man, thank you so much. I feel dumber, which means I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
That's my goal every time I appear on a show. Yeah.
We'll be playing, we'll be watching. Thanks, man. Maybe we'll do this again down the road. Thanks a lot, man.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Bye. Wow. Again, I don't know if I lost brain cells or gained brain cells. I'm Robert Milazzo sitting in for Renee and Jam and Renee, James and Renee, Renee and James. See, I'm trying to get my puzzle on in my brain. Get on up. 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, all the time zones in between. Send us a comment. Send us a thought. Go to your device. Say, Rob, you made me feel like I want to do a puzzle, and I'll see it. Producer Sarah will see it as well. Just say. That's right, Sarah. Sarah, you should be a producer of the show. You know what? You are. Mission accomplished. Good for us. Sarah's awesome, a rock star. So today is about things I don't know. One down, and I've reconfirmed that I don't know. The second segment, I wanted to do something that I'm not making light of any of these ideas, and certainly not this next topic I want to talk to today. I'll talk about today on the show. You can never know enough about this topic. And I know every day this month, James and Renee have done a Black History moment. So I wanted to honor that as we're nearing the end of February and look at some of my frame of reference, which is diversity in film. I come from film, and whatever that means. Not come from a film, although I do usually come from a film. I saw a couple films this weekend, but I also am always thinking about diversity in film spaces and media spaces. So we needed an expert on this, and we have one. We're lucky to have experts here. I love when experts answer my emails. This is always a good sign. My next guest is an entertainment journalist who has contributed to the LA Times, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Billboard, Fortune, Essence, and Ebony, all incredible journals. He also launched his own nationally syndicated art and lifestyle column. This man likes words and thoughts. I like that. He leads the African American Film Critics Association, AAFCA, for those of you playing the crossword version of today. And the AAFCA is the largest collection of Black film critics in North America, and he founded this in 2003. I am honored and excited and really curious to know more about the current state of diversity in film and TV and through his really unique expert lens. Please welcome to get on up in the Backchannel, Mr. Gil Robertson. Gil, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, man. Thank you for joining us today. For me today, I really appreciate it. So yeah, we have half an hour to talk about the biggest topic, one of the biggest topics, in the ether, and one you deal with a lot, whether directly or indirectly. Talk to me about diversity in, let's call it Hollywood. Is it too, when we brought in the concept, is it to our demise? Like, diversity in Hollywood, is that too broad a question to ask, or do we have to look at it behind the screen or in front of the camera, behind the camera? Like, where do you start with diversity in the current state of media making and fiction making?
Well, you certainly would start behind the camera, and you would start with the creators who are responsible for those projects. the writers, the directors, the producers. You would start off with you would need to take a look at the C-suites in Hollywood at institutions like studios and production houses, and just because it's that's where it happens. It happens, at that level long before folks like you and me and audience members to your show, ever get to see the images that they watch on screen and on TV.
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking, then where does it start even before that predicate? Is it young people? It's funny. It's kind of like a circle. I was thinking, well, it's young people seeing the emblem of creation. It's young men and women of kids of color seeing those shows on TV and on the screen, and they aspire to want to be those studio heads. I was thinking of I'm sure something you read when it comes out, the UCLA Hollywood.
You can't be what you can't see. So absolutely, and so it begins there. It begins really with people wanting to make a real commitment to diversity that they see in their everyday lives. When you live in cities like Los Angeles, New York, where a lot of these decisions are made, it's truly baffling that you don't see more of the diversity that's right in front of you in film, in movies, and on TV. And a lot of that's because of it's for a lot of different reasons, but not to beat a dead horse, because
I don't know if you can, though. I'm going to stop that for a second, man. But I mean, not respectfully. Like, I just feel like, do you ever feel like we're having the same conversations as a industry, and from your expert vantage point, like, do you ever get tired? I know you're about to say something smarter than me, but does this tire you too in a weird way?
Well, yeah, because I've been a working professional in this business for, approaching 30 years. And, we're still having the same conversation. It just, it shape shifts, but we're still having it nevertheless. And so at what point do we, and there are improvements that are being made. I mean, there's certainly, during the time that I've been active in the space, I've seen a number of opportunities, the way the town conducts business, the kind of opportunities that are extended across racial and gender lines. So, I certainly don't want to suggest that things are as bad as they were. I think people are making concerted efforts to change their attitudes and their beliefs, and to make the extra effort, the extra push to not just to move beyond a small insular, group of people, community of people, to make certain decisions. So, yeah, we are seeing positive growth, and it's important that we continue to push for more.
In 2003, you know the dates better than I, so if I'm off, you started the AAFCA, African American Film Critics Association. What was the impetus? Was it a slow burn, or was it now this has got to be done? This is important. What was the impetus to start the group?
Well, back then the motivation was certainly to provide resources and support for next gen Black journalists looking to build careers for themselves in A&E journalism, and also to provide the same thing for emerging Black filmmakers. And in the 19 years that we've done a lot of that. We've done a lot of that through our work, on a very grassroots level, working with colleges and universities, working with film festivals, working with other community orgs to educate the public about the cinematic arts, about content creation, about television, about distribution, making sure that they understand the role that they play in the success of all of those things. And also providing, support to another generation, to several generations actually since then of journalists, of A&E journalists who are looking to establish themselves, covering arts and entertainment. So we
Well,
feel good about it.
Well, I was also considering the unique concept of having a kind of forward-facing awards ceremony, which I believe you've had for 13 years. I don't know, maybe off for a year or so, but it's been a wonderful construction. Why was it important to have a ceremonial moment? Whether it's in real, obviously we're not in real spaces, but you have an event, you have awards, you bestow awards. Why was that important? Maybe I'm using an uppercase I, and maybe it's just we want to do this. Was it a want to do this, or we think we should be doing this?
Well, it's something that the membership wanted to do. We wanted to sort of, when we created AFCA, we obviously mimicked other similar orgs that were around us, and many of those organizations, the highlight of the year for them is the top 10 list. Is their top 10 list of best of film, best of performances, just best of. And so very often that manifests itself, as a show, as a ceremony of some sort, be it real or virtual. In our case, we received an opportunity 13 years ago to produce, a live event that has really grown into something very significant, within the entertainment community. And so, we're blessed. We're extremely happy that, that there's so much attention around the show, and that the show has the type of influence on that it does within the film and TV communities. Since we started the AFCA Awards, we've spun off 2 additional programs, AFCA TV Honors, which obviously examines TV, sort of a feed-in show to the Emmys, as well as the AFCA Salute to Excellence Special Achievement Award Luncheon, which is more like a career award, like a governor's award.
We're here with Gil Robertson. Follow him on Twitter at GIL Robertson, and go to the AFCA website. Certainly amazing documentation of the history of the organization and the mission. And I was also thinking, about, honestly, man, like I was thinking of the Oscars, and I was thinking, what is it here? Do we place too much importance on this stuff? And maybe this is a cute idea adjacent to what you're saying, because it sounds like you started the awards kind of in a almost pure way, but I feel like the Oscars, like, part of me thinks let it all go away. I actually think the Oscars are a big source of a problem here when we think of diversity, because of it's an unofficial holiday, Gil. It's like one of 2 unofficial holidays: the Super Bowl, whether you watch football. It used to be the Oscars when we watch TV, but it's kind of like it's one of these 2 unofficial holidays. I'm going to say this editorially. I think that's a problem. So before we look into Oscar diversity and hosts diversity this year, what do you think about the Oscars? If you could wish upon a star, would you want it to be less important, or would you want it just a greater balance of importance?
Well, for us, the Oscars is the star player in the house. All of the other shows that feed into it. And so the Oscars is the acknowledged leader. It's the quarterback, and I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with it. I think that like much of television, the producers of the Academy Awards are facing challenges with how to best engage an audience that's a lot different than the ones that we grew up with, and the ones that that previous generations have responded to positively. We have a generation now that that's no longer tied to the TV, or no longer dependent on television the way other generations have been. And so how do you compete against mobile devices and with Snapchat and social media And so they're trying to figure it out. Producing a show, I'm a lot more sympathetic to the challenges that the producers face, because
Yes,
I
yes.
know that there's a lot involved to keep people engaged for 2.5 hours. It's not an easy task whatsoever. And there are a lot of balls in the air. And I think the producers are trying to hit the right notes. And I just think that we need to stick with them a little while longer and hope that they make it.
Have
Really,
you ever been to an Oscar ceremony?
many, many, many years ago.
Do you remember? I don't want to date you, but do you remember what was the picture of the year? Like when many years? Like, are we talking
Oh
like
my God.
Charlie Chaplin? Are we talking Sidney Poitier? What are we talking?
I might have been in the audience that night with Chaplin. I don't know. No, I actually, it's funny. I went to the Oscars in a non-professional capacity. I was actually working the event. I was in college.
Oh,
And so
cool.
so I was there actually working as part of the security team.
Oh, interesting.
And that was my first Academy Award. And so unusually, and I mean, this is going back literally almost to ancient history, but you're talking about, wow, it must 30, 35 years ago. So
Well, I was a little clunky with my Chaplin and Sidney Poitier,
no,
but
there's talk that I might have been there.
but the more cogent concept is: did you sense the lack of diversity physically being there? Not to
Not
jump on
that
that
night,
old.
certainly. I was just there because my dad forced me uh, to work.
So you were protesting your dad's
That,
marching orders, not the lack of diversity.
yeah, that totally wasn't even on my radar. Um, I probably lasted in that job a week until he settled back down and things were calm for a minute.
Mr. Robertson, why are you so angry? Is it because over diversity? No, it's because I got to work tonight. I'm
Yeah.
teasing. I'm teasing. What about those two
Normally on
choices? Yeah.
Oscar night, now as a professional and as Gil Robertson, I am usually at a Oscar viewing party. And for many years, we produced a party at the Four Seasons that was definitely one of the hot spots that people would come to, following the show. So, yeah, typically on Oscar night, I'm working. I'm at a party, either something that, Africa's a part of directly, or something that I've just been invited to enjoy the show.
Couple more thoughts. We're here with Gil Robertson, generously giving us his Monday, some time on his Monday. In awards season, whatever the hell that means. The fifth season, right? It's like winter, spring, summer, fall awards season. So he
Indeed.
actually is super busy. It was also thinking of the hosts a little bit. I want to get off the Oscars because I hate spending time on, and not because I actually you present a really pure response to it. I love that you kind of look at it as a producer. I love how you look at it. I think you're much more mannered in this concept. But the hosts were
I mean,
announced.
it's so easy to criticize
I
until
know, I
you.
know. I'm Italian. It's Monday. I had coffee. I'm a mess, dude. But talk a little bit about the hosts this year. So we have Wanda Sykes, Regina King, and
Hall.
Regina Hall. Sorry, Regina Hall and Amy Schumer. What did you think of the choices of those three hosts?
Well, what's interesting is that any of those women could have hosted solo. I mean,
That's
all
what
of
I
them
thought, actually. Yeah.
are enormously talented. I can only imagine it should be a laugh a minute. It really, really should be. I'm hopeful that that the potential of what this looks like actually comes to fruition.
It's funny. A couple more beats here, Gil. I was thinking something you started with, which I thought was really wonderful. And because we look at diversity on all sides of the camera, let's say, or the screen, let's say, right? And I love how you started in almost like the boardroom, and UCLA had their Hollywood Diversity Report 2020. I don't know how much you got into it, but it's funny. The subtitle was "A Tale of Two Hollywoods." It's like I love when that's part of this the titling. But one of the things I thought was interesting, I looked through it before the show, and at the time, 91% of studio heads are white, and 82 are male. 91%. In 2015, 100% of studio heads were white males. Now, we could talk all day about gender too, but let's look at diversity of men and women of color. How do we change the leadership of I think this is the hardest thing to change. And I'm not saying it's not hard. Look, it's hard to change who's cast. I get that, but what I'm saying, I think one of the biggest fights is who's running these studios, who's making these decisions. How do we do that? And not to compare it to the NFL, but look at the shit show of the NFL, you know, and they're at least nudging the needle a little bit. Hollywood doesn't even have a needle, it seems like.
Well, they are making some small moves. You have Perlina Ibokwe, for example. You have about 5 Black women who are running, who are CEOs and chairmen of, if not studios outright, like a Perlina Ibokwe over at NBC Entertainment, or Channing Johnson over at Warner Brothers. You have, so they're slowly, you're seeing an increase, but I mean, it goes back to something that we're all guilty of. We tend to hire the people who are most like ourselves. I'm guilty of it myself. I have to deliberately stop and remind myself, oh, we hire people who immediately fit, our comfort zone. And that's not because any of us are racist. It's just because it's just natural. It's a natural reflex that you hire people who you have the most, but you have a very, how do I want to say this? An instantaneous, connection with, where it's not a heavy lift. And so again, I'm not going to take the ugly racist, out of the bag and say that it's racism. I think that we overuse the word racism. Racism is what happened to George Floyd. Racism happens every single day, and trust me, it's alive and well in this city. But I do feel like most of my colleagues in this community are making, or at least conscious of the circumstances that they face, and are trying to make some effort, or trying to operate outside of themselves in a way that contributes to creating a change, and not just with Black people, but with the Asian community and the Hispanic community as well. With the LGBTQ community. With regards to, gender diversity, with regards to disabled. I mean, when you really start talking about diversity and inclusion, you've really got to take a truly 360-degree approach to the idea.
100%. I think
and not just throw a few Black people in the mix and say, oh, good, I'm done. But because you're not.
Well, one of the funny things, I was reading that stat, like 91% are white male. You know what I thought? That means the rest of us are really smart, because it's like, we don't think of the studios the way we used to, because it's so decentralized. It's so in the sense of, we could have leadership of color that we don't even know of, which is wonderful, because it is leadership. We don't rely on the studio ethos to content create. So I don't think that's like, if this was 1990, which, like, in 1990 was probably 0%, and then it's scary because it's like studios dominate. Here it's a little different, which is good. But I agree. I agree. It's a multi-pronged thing. Sorry, Gil, you're about to say
absolutely. It really, really is, and you've got to be careful. I mean, okay, so it's 91%. Are we suggesting that those men aren't qualified? It was like the problem with Oscars So White, where, okay, so what? Everyone nominated is white. Were they qualified? Did their performances merit, that pick, that consideration? With AFCA, we are unapologetic, and we probably have one of the most diverse award ceremonies in the city, and our picks are all over the place in terms of ethnicity, race, gender. We pick the best. We pick the person whose performance merits the awards that we give out. However, if there is a African American, a Black person in a role up against someone who may be on the short list for some of the other shows, that Black person is going to win because it's this, AFCA is where being Black makes the difference. Just much in the same way that if you're going for a GLAAD award, being gay makes the difference.
But
Or if
have
you're
you
going for a BAFTA award, being British makes the difference.
have you ever
So,
thought of put on a bulletin board? Sorry, that there shouldn't be any nominees that aren't of color, men and women. Have you ever thought of that? And would that be a third rail where it actually disqualifies you to be a white nominee?
by no means, no. If you look at the history of our show, you will see that there have been many years where there's been whites who've won in multiple categories. Best actor. I mean, it's what it is. So I'm not going to penalize. Going back to the original topic, I mean, the 91%, we definitely want to, what is that 90, what are those guys doing is what I really want to look at. How are those guys moving the needle?
Right.
Instead of attacking them, I just think there's a different approach that we can take in trying to achieve the goals that we're looking to, to attain. I don't think attacking them is the right way. I think there's a different strategy that needs to be employed. People don't like to be attacked. When you attack people, people go to defend themselves. People respond most of the time negatively. So I just think that we need to really, really adopt a different strategy instead of the finger pointing and the name calling, and just think of a different way of going about doing it.
Last thoughts here with Gil Robertson so generously giving us his early morning in a busy time. I was thinking one thing, just curatorial, Gil, I wanted to get your thought on, 2020, George Floyd, and not to put these two in the same sentence, but I have to get to a different point. HBO, same year, and I think it was within the same time span, pulled Gone with the Wind out of their catalog, HBO, and returned it 2 weeks later with like this kind of historical context, video, et cetera, et cetera. TCM has done it as well, like the context of what the representations were, Hattie McDaniel, the history, the good, the bad, the misrepresentation. What did you think of that on two levels? Pulling a film out of a release because its context has changed, A, and B, putting other visual framework around it to explain it. What do you think of both of those? As a film lover and a film watcher yourself, what do you think of those two acts?
Well, I'm part of a committee, as you probably know, at Disney that does the same thing. I mean, things change. The population changes, the attitudes, the shift in the morals. I mean, so film, it captures, specific period, is a reflection of specific periods of time. And so as so I think that those advisories are important so that people watching that content in a different age, understands the context in which these characters were drawn. So I'm all for it.
Do you think we'll get? I don't want to say we. Do you think you'll get to a place professionally of satisfaction? I know you're there already, and passion. I know you're there already. But what I'm saying, as we say, the circular concept that chisels down, down, down. Do you ever think something will find a resolution point? Diversity speaking, talking in terms of diversity, that you will feel, oh wow, yeah, we've done it. We've done it.
I hope so. I mean, I guess that's really all I can say. I mean, I certainly hope so. I think that, as you see, I think that technology is sort of leveling the playing field. And I think that also, well, two things. I mean, technology is certainly increasing opportunities for the tools that underrepresented filmmakers have to get their product made and seen out, to the marketplace. And I also think that the reliance on global economies, globalization, is making Hollywood make different decisions. I think a little bit differently than they have in the past about, the types of films they made and the types of people that they're putting in those movies. So I
Yeah,
think that in the
yeah.
long run, I mean, people are going to always be people. And again, I think we need to be very, very careful when we point the finger and when we accuse people, or when we operate in a space where we make people become defensive. Um, I believe that the understanding is there about what needs to be done, about what audiences are unwilling to settle for. And I think that the studios, the networks, and other bastions of content creation in the city will respond correctly, or either they'll become dinosaurs, they'll go out of business.
Well, just to cherry pick, you said you're optimistic a few times and you're a believer, and that is good enough for me because I think men and women of all colors who lead as you do should be optimistic and have belief, not simply be ready to roll up their sleeves and fight. Like metaphorically, like
Mm.
there's a kind of, some people see the donut, some people see the whole. And I think it's important, as you said, that we need to kind of settle and have the discussion, and the other things that distract us need to be kind of put aside for the sake of progress. So I'm glad you're in this conversation, man. Really glad.
No, definitely, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, I mean, let's keep having the conversation. But let's create constructive dialogues where we're really, looking for solutions and not necessarily being very, indicting people for.
Yeah, an old teacher used to say there's two type of people in the world. Someone will tell you the plane is on fire. The other person will tell you how to land it. Let's
Absolutely.
kind of be that person. Hey, man, thank you so much. I know it's early and I know you got work to do. Thank you for being with us here this morning on Backchannel.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Gil
God
Robertson,
bless.
everybody. Thank you.
You
Likewise,
too.
man. Safe travels. So yeah, some small conversations on a Monday. I got to name check people before we bring in our third guest. Justin just joined the stream. Kim just joined the stream. Sarah joined the stream. Russia joined the stream. It's good to see Russia on the stream. And I'll leave my political jokes out of it for this morning. Just to restate what you're watching and doing, you're contributing, you're listening, you're stating your presence here on Backchannel every morning and all through the day, 12 hours, 6 a.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. I was gonna say Western. There should be a Western time zone. I don't like Pacific. I like Western because it makes me feel like I'm in a Western. Jonah just joined the stream. See what I'm saying? There's, it's all a stream. I always think, there's this concept now that everything is one lane: sports, politics, entertainment. To me, it's all one stream. Backchannel, go to backchannel.tv, be a part of it, or say into your device, say, what is Rob going to talk about next? And I and producer Sarah, or great producer Sarah, will see it and we'll integrate it. And I'm about to get to that. The other thing you could do for this show or any of our shows, write us a review. I believe it's hello@backchannel.tv, and write a review. The shows love reviews. Amazon loves reviews. We love to hear from you, and we love that you're here. Keep coming back. This has gone fast. It always goes fast. Sarah's thinking, as a producer, it doesn't go as fast. As a host, it goes really fast. Producer Sarah, who can't respond, so she's got to agree, I guess, technically. Anyway, the meta of today has been palindrome date and how little I know. I could have told you that, and I did, but now I've proved it. Happy palindrome day indeed. Give somebody a reversible sweater. So that's the perfect palindrome gift, something that you can wear one way, flip it around, and wear it even more effectively the other way. That is a palindrome. Not to be confused with an anagram. An anagram is just a jumble of letters, and you can make other words from those letters. Anyway, this is a big one. We've had big topics today. All jokes aside, we have, but now joking, we have. But today is one I've been waiting many years to kind of solve. The last thing I know nothing about. Hold on to your caffeine, get on uppers. I know nothing about NASCAR racing. And I feel because I'm a sports nut, I should get it, and I don't. And yesterday was the Daytona 500, and I saw the results. I don't know if they're good or interesting or relevant, or if it was a good race or a bad race. So I wanted to have someone on the show to talk about NASCAR racing. Also, because on this date in 1959 was the first ever Daytona 500. Can you believe that? So it's what the 60. Yesterday was the 63rd ever, but the first ever was today, 1959. So I need an expert to lead me through NASCAR. What am I not getting, expert? What am I not? What am I missing? And there's plenty, but we'll see as much. We'll try to put as much into the next half hour as we can. Our last guest, and probably our most valuable, and to me personally, because I know nothing about NASCAR racing, is a breaking news editor at jalopnik.com. What a cool name, Jalopnik. Is that like apparatchik? Breaking news editor at jalopnik.com, and she has dedicated her career to telling what she calls high-octane stories that make motorsport what it is. So what is it? So we're going to ask her that and many questions, unraveling the mysteries of NASCAR racing. Please welcome to Backchannel, esteemed guest and solver of NASCAR mysteries, Elizabeth Blackstock. Hey, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So let's get the first thing out of the way. Blackstock, that's a fake name. It sounds because
it sounds fake.
It doesn't sound fake because you're fake. It just sounds like you want to be in a race. Like a Blackstock is something that it just sounds like auto-rific. It is fake.
It's like a blend between race car, but also like aristocracy. So yeah, I took it from my husband. It wasn't my name. I stole it.
Well, there's your first mistake. I'm teasing. Welcome. So did you watch the Daytona 500 yesterday?
I did watch the Daytona 500, and as a NASCAR fan, it was a very good race. We're entering a brand new era of technology and the design of the cars. So it was the real first test to see how they actually performed. And I would have to say that it was very good.
Well, as you said, this race was interesting first. But before we go into warp speed, Elizabeth, if that is your name, I'm teasing. Tell us like the basics. I'm not getting so much of this. Like, I'm just not getting it. But before we get into my stupidity, which we've already gotten into inadvertently, how was the race? Like, was it a good race? I know a rookie won, Austin Cindric win, right?
Yeah.
And he beat Bubba Wallace, someone I knew. Like I knew
Yes.
Bubba Wallace because Bubba's become a kind of avatar, which we'll talk about, like, how NASCAR has become kind of newsworthy in a way. It's always been newsworthy, but give us the down low on yesterday. Was it a good race? Was it a boring race? Like, take us through it a little bit.
It was a very good race. We've got this new era where the cars are designed so that they can actually closely race each other, which in the past has not been the case. So you want the cars have to aerodynamically get rid of they want as much clean air as possible, which means, no turbulence in front of you. It'd be the same as if you were running directly into a windstorm. You don't want to do that. You want as clean of air as possible. So these new cars have really done a great job creating that. So these cars can come, close together. They push each other. They can get a little violent sometimes, but that's all part of how these cars are designed, that they can take a little bit of abuse, push each other around, push each other to the front. And it was exciting. I don't think anyone was expecting a rookie to win, but I think it was a great entry into this new era where, we all kind of expected someone a little bit longer term, more of a veteran, to accommodate and get used to these cars a little bit quicker. But I think, having a veteran not win that race and having a rookie take it really shows that we're entering a whole new era of what NASCAR is.
So these next gen cars are more green. Is that too cute a way to say it?
Green in what sense?
Well, green, not green like new. I mean, like environmentally friendly.
Yes. They're a little bit more. They actually, so everyone is going towards electrification at this point. That's like kind of the next big step within motorsport. The NASCAR current next gen cars, they're not totally green in the sense that they're not hybrid yet, but they have this possibility to become hybrid. So that's built in, that future proofing is built into the car. So we're getting there. The biggest thing with these is that they're a little bit more stock, which basically means that it's a lot cheaper for teams to be able to afford. It doesn't cost as much money to put a car together, to bring it to the racetrack, and to put it on the track and race it.
Have we democratized the car? I don't mean to get too deep in the woods because I want to go back to the beginning. Like, what am I watching? But, I know NASCAR seems to make changes a lot, and they're known for their changes, and almost sometimes they overchange. It's funny because a lot of these institutions go slow, but NASCAR seems to be very limber. And I think NASCAR every season has a new rule book every season, which is interesting. But I don't know the date, but I remember there was a hubbub about the cars were all modified to be not unique enough anymore. Like they're all like bring people back to the pack. Do we have a more level playing field because of car technology as well?
I think it is. That was a big goal. So within motorsport as a whole,
hold a second. Do you see how smart that question seemed? And I always say that because
it was very good.
No, but what am I saying is I don't know nothing. I'm not. Don't let my question belie the fact that I know Zippo, but I know I get that. Sorry to go on. Why would you want? Is it for more watchability that you want every car to have a chance? Is that it?
Yeah. So motorsport kind of historically has always been a proving ground for new technology, but we've really reached a point where that technology isn't as advancing as quickly as it used to. And it's also financially impossible for teams to do something outside the realm of normality, I guess, outside the rule book, if you will. So having them all, making that playing field creates more competition, and it creates, you want fans to watch it, and motorsport has kind of had a little bit of a downturn in the past couple years because of that.
I want to talk about that in a kind of mid-beat. I still want to ask you one quick question about yesterday. Did you watch the whole thing? Now, what I'm saying is these take a time commitment.
Yes.
Now I'm going to make a joke, and beat me up if you want to. Like, when you're watching a movie, you don't want to leave because you'll miss something. I feel like if I'm watching a NASCAR race, I'm not going to miss much if I go get lunch. But that's the moron perspective. Me, like, what am I watching? Like, why should I watch every minute of every race? Why?
It's really interesting because there are going to be a lot of people who tell you it doesn't matter until you get to the end. But the whole race is a build up to get to that checkered flag. So everything that a car and a driver and a team does during all 500 miles of the Daytona 500 is preparing to get to the front. So it might seem kind of like, oh, I don't have to be here for it. But if you're really watching it and you're watching it for strategy and for, pit stops and what have you, you're seeing how these teams are playing together, how drivers are, working with manufacturers that are similar to them. So Ford's working with Fords as opposed to Chevrolets. And you're seeing, there's a whole other layer of the technical strategy that's going on. To the layperson, that's usually
me,
not the fun part.
Elizabeth is being kind and saying I am she's talking to me directly. No one else, you can all listen, but she's talking to me. Yes, go on. I am the layperson. Yeah,
but for the layperson, it is as interesting as you want it to be. Like if you're watching for that, it's a little bit more in depth and a little bit more involved, and you kind of have to know a little bit more about NASCAR to really understand what's happening.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm watching it for the palace intrigue.
Yes.
Using the term of is it going to be a fist fight? I don't want anyone hurt in the pitting, but is there going to be a wheel that spins away? I don't want anyone hurt. I'm just saying like the palace intrigue, which I can get the next day on a highlight. But I guess my point is, go there. What are the details? Yeah. What is the strategy? What is the thing? Can someone in the back of the race actually get to the front of the race? Is pole position all? Like when I think it's all about pole position. I never get a sense that someone in the glut of car can win. Am I missing the point here? What is the strategy to NASCAR?
So it comes down to like pit stops. So at a pit stop, you're choosing how much fuel to add to the car, if you're going to fill up or not. If you fill up, it gets too heavy, and so you're not going to go as fast. But if you go light, then you may have to stop later to fill up again. So you're there's always a gamble you're making. If you stop for tires, are you changing 2 tires, or are you just changing, or are you doing all of them? And again, that influences the way that this race will play out. So if you're taking a lot of gambles and a lot of risks and strategies that are going in. So a team at the back of the field is probably going to play a little bit more. They're going to take those riskier strategies to try to make things work. But it is totally possible for a driver at the very back of the field to race all the way to the front, based on those things. Like, crashes are always probably going to take out a couple other drivers. So to be in the position where your car is prepared to take advantage of that, that's pretty much the whole goal. But it's, it's risky. It's that strategy that comes in where if you're banking on there being a yellow flag and everyone's slowing down and bunching up together, and that yellow flag doesn't come, taking a green flag pit stop is always a bad idea, because you're going to lose a lot more time than if everyone was much slower on the track than they are at full racing speed. So,
okay, so this, that expression, it's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's me. So I gotta go back. I think I invented it's not you, it's me, but that's more about my dating life. Different show. My point is, yellow flag is a caution flag.
That's correct.
What instigates a caution flag? Is it only an accident?
Accidents, if there's debris on the track, sometimes there's a beer can that makes its way onto the racing surface. So
that's my next beat. The beer can, people watching. So there's potential. I'm just going to make a really bad joke of what could fall on the track at a NASCAR. But so if there's a beer can, they wave the flag like that.
Yeah, if there's weather that's coming in, they'll slow everyone down. NASCAR doesn't race in the rain; it gets a little too dangerous. So
Well, here's what I don't understand. Sorry. So let's say there's someone bumps and there's a spin out. Mm-hmm. All the cars keep going. Who knows? Does someone keep track of the order they were in? Because when that happens, people go slower, because when you're avoiding an accident, you lose your place. Mm-hmm. Do they try to reset the race after an accident based on where it can they do that accurately? Or they
there's actually every car has timers, and everything is pretty much on. So as soon as that yellow flag flies, someone kind of hits a button, and at that moment it tracks where every single car is on track. So you have an exact idea of who is in first, second, third, wherever. So it does get kind of wonky if someone, in 15th place has spun out and taken half the back of the field with them. But there is that accurate. As soon as that yellow flag comes out, they've got electronic readouts of who is where on the track, and as cars come and line back up, if there is someone who goes to the pit lane, they move to the back of the field. But anyone who is still on track kind of gets to, they know exactly where they're supposed to be.
So a green flag, what does that have to do with pit? Do you need a green flag to pit, or what does a green flag mean? Is that a restart flag? A green flag is just a restart flag.
So anytime cars are going at full speed on track, that's green flag racing. So yes, the green flag, you wave it at the start. That's when everyone goes, and you wave it after cautions, and that's when everyone goes. But anytime cars are going, it's at full speed. It's green flag racing.
So you also see pit crews with headsets on, and racers, or what are they saying back and forth? I mean, are they saying yeah, man, you're going really fast? What do they say?
So you usually have the people in the pit lane, and then you've got someone called a spotter who is way up high, can see almost a bird's eye view of the whole track. So they're all talking to each other.
An offensive coordinator kind of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So they're kind of how does the car feel? Are you, able to catch up to the person in front of you? Maybe you need to slow down because we need to conserve fuel. How are your tires doing? The spotters will be saying there's someone on your outside, so don't go into them.
Oh, wait a second. So these are backseat drivers.
Pretty much, yeah.
Isn't that do you ever hear a driver say, "Hey, shut up! I'm trying to race"?
They do every so often. If it gets in the heat of the moment, it's please stop talking to me. I'm busy. I'm doing something. You can't do this.
I'm working for a living. You guys play with your little, your little Hot Wheels thing.
Yeah.
how did you get into it? How did you start like a love for it? Not like I'm not talking overall about cars. I'm talking about the
Mhm.
act of watching competitive racing. How did you get hooked in it on it?
I grew up with it. My family was a big NASCAR family, and we grew up in Michigan, so everything was cars all the time. And it was just kind of tradition to sit down on a Sunday and watch NASCAR. I grew out of it, I would say, as I got older because it wasn't cool to like the things that your parents liked. So as I got older after that, I started kind of getting back into it, realizing like there's a lot of stories here that people aren't seeing, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, the motivations of drivers, the history and the context of what a race means, I think is what really drew me back in. And then the racing on track was just kind of like the cherry on top of, it's exciting, and it's thrilling and it's loud, and you can, when you're at the racetrack, you can kind of feel it and smell it, and it's a whole sensory experience. But I really like, the deep stuff, like the context that kind of comes in all around it.
Well, that's another question. I think some sports are better in person than on TV.
Mhm.
I think hockey is great
Yeah.
in person. On TV, it's a little sluggish. But the opposite is true too. Like I think football is a great TV sport. Certain. What are you saying? And I don't want to put words in your mouth. That being there does kind of elevate the experience.
It really does. When you're watching on TV, you will probably have a much better grasp on what's happening, because when you're at the track, everything is so loud, you can't hear announcers saying what's going on, and you can't, it's harder to keep up with the strategy elements that are going on. But when you're there in person, there's something about the physicality of it that you just don't get when you're at home. Like to feel the cars in your chest as they start the race, to smell the cars, the burnouts, everything.
The human
It's
carnage, the third degree
exactly.
burns, the
Yeah.
skin grafting procedures. Those are really
Exactly.
those elevate the I'm teasing.
It really does. It really does. Takes it to another step.
The ambulance is whirring, the fire hose is going.
Mhm.
Well, I'm teasing. I'm sorry. But I guess another question is, does it relax you, like watching at home?
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of really oxymoronic to me that something so like blood pumping can relax.
Mhm.
Does it relax you?
Yeah, the repetitiveness of it, like seeing them do the same laps over and over again, like that. There's a lot to pay attention to, but also it is kind of like, it is calming. Even when I'm physically at the racetrack, sometimes I'll find myself like, oh, I'm like lulled into it because it's just, the sun's usually out and it's warm and there's loud noises and I'm not thinking about anything else. So I kind of,
Why not float the river like in a tube? Why go to like I mean, there are other more quieter, relaxing things. And I guess the other point is, do you wear earplugs? Like, how do I have a conversation? Did you and your husband go on dates to the races? Like,
yes, we actually met at the racetrack.
how are you married? Maybe that's why you are married. You didn't really understand each other's core beliefs because you just made them up in your mind. Like, what is it? How do you relax at a race? Is it just kind of like, as you say, it's like a symphony it just becomes its own symphony? Is that kind of it?
It really is. Like, it feels almost like it envelops you. And suddenly you're not like thinking about all the other things in life anymore. If I'm sitting like quietly floating down a river on a tube, my mind's just going about everything that what I need to be doing. Here's I'm writing something in my head. I'm planning something in my head. But if I'm at the racetrack, there's the noise and the atmosphere of it. I'm not thinking about all those things anymore. I'm focused on what's happening on track. I'm looking at it, and even if, it is hard to talk to people, but it also depends on the kind of racing you're at. NASCAR is a lot louder than everything else, and the fact that it's on oval tracks predominantly means there's not tons of time, but on road courses that are about 3 miles and kind of wander through the woods somewhere, you have those moments of like, can you believe that I didn't, that was the craziest thing I ever saw. So there is this like, it takes those other thoughts away.
We're here with Elizabeth Blackstock, giving us some time. It's the day after a holiday in the racing world, and I think the IndyCar season starts next week or something.
Yes, it does.
Are you not as interested in other forms of cars like the IndyCar? Is that
IndyCar is actually my favorite. NASCAR
Why?
is like,
Why the Indy car? I know why the funny car isn't your
yeah.
favorite. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell the allure is of a funny car. But anyway? Why is the Indy car your favorite? Like, what designations do you make in your mind that say, "Oh, I like this racing better than that racing"?
IndyCar is, when I first got into IndyCar in about 2014, the series has split apart and come back together many times. So they tried to fraction off, and some drivers and teams would be creating their own series, and then they would kind of be chastised when they realized it wasn't working and come back together. So the sport was very small when I was getting into it, and there was that element of it. There was, I got to know a lot of the people, the drivers, the team members, as I went to races, because I was, they get to know the fans very intimately, because there weren't a ton at the time that were coming to a lot of races. But so IndyCar is open wheel racing. That means that their heads are exposed, the cockpits are open, the tires and the wheels are usually exposed. It's a little bit more dangerous. It's a little bit more advanced technologically than NASCAR. Formula One would be the pinnacle of open wheel racing. That's where you spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make your car faster, marginally than the next person on the track. But IndyCar is, it's a little bit more down home, and a little bit more, I don't know, they race on ovals and street circuits and road courses. So they get a nice blend, and it feels like you kind of get a better evaluation of talent for these drivers than you do necessarily in Formula One, that's only doing the road and street circuits, or NASCAR, that's predominantly just doing ovals.
Now, you drink milk at the end of the Indy car, right?
Yeah, at the Indy 500, that's your celebration.
Is it almond milk? Is it cashew? But is it?
You get to pick. Every year they release all of the driver choices.
You can have soy milk. You can have soy milk.
They don't recommend it.
Because you'd get beat up in the locker room afterwards.
Yeah,
that kind of
there was actually a driver who drank orange juice at the end of the Indy 500, and he is like universally hated because he did that. Like, he broke the tradition, and it was just like everyone was upset. So now you have to drink milk.
Well, a couple of last thoughts with Elizabeth. Been a good sport, and I'm not trying to insult you at all. I'm because I travel a lot overseas, and racing, like in Monaco and Italy, like I'm always fascinated by what sports rise to the top. I always feel like a country gets the sport it deserves. Like NFL football is super popular here because it says something about like what an American is. Like, we've got to fight for things, and we've got to outthink, but talk a little bit about, I think there's always a unique relationship between a sport and its fan base. What is, describe the NASCAR fan base and dispel any rumors. I mean, I could throw 1,000 rumors, not rumors. I could, like, cliches.
Yeah.
Talk about, you can include the cliches or bust the cliches. Describe a NASCAR fan to me.
It's kind of difficult because I'm pretty sure everyone has the redneck in mind when they think of a NASCAR fan.
Wasn't thinking it. Yes, I was. No, I wasn't.
No.
I don't think I could legally say that word, but anyway.
Yeah. But it was a sport that grew up in the South in America. It was a sport that grew out of, bootlegging. It was a
Prohibition
exactly
was really like the cars wanted speed and dexterity to evade the law and get liquor moving as quickly as possible. Sorry, go on. Yeah,
exactly. And it was a sport that was possible for people to do it who didn't have a lot of money, which I think, in Europe, a lot of the racing that was done there was done by very wealthy, aristocratic people, the people who had a lot of money and who were able to buy these really fancy, super fast cars. And in America, it was, we have this family vehicle that we're using to transport the kids around, but also to bootleg liquor, but also we're taking it to the racetrack because, we can. And so I think
some of those traditions haven't ended. There's still people still I have a bootleg. I have a whole bathtub full of gin that I'm looking to unload. But I'm joking. But I think your point is a really great one, and also in a way, it's an obstruction. It's another part of this country and sport connection. Like one of the reasons NFL football, there are thousands, there are others, but hasn't spread to Europe. It's like it's expensive to be a young kid playing football. It's like sometimes kicking a ball is easier economically, so you become a soccer player, or throwing and catching. So I like the fact that you're kind of contextualizing it in terms of like practical, what is our environment like? I think that's an important concept.
Yeah, and it was a cheap way to spend a weekend, and it was easy to get to the racetrack because it was probably in someone's backyard that you knew. And it's, NASCAR has gotten a lot bigger and a lot more expensive since it first started, but it still does feel like there's that kind of Southern pride to it, but in a good sense.
Yeah,
There's
it's like college football in a weird way.
exactly.
But I guess the point is, like, at some point, don't you have to speak beyond your fan base? I think all sports try to do this. I don't know if NASCAR does it as well. How do you how should or could NASCAR go beyond its fan base?
They've made little baby steps in the past couple of years. So they banned the Confederate flag, which I think was a big step. Especially it was kind of standing up to a lot of those stereotypes, and people were upset about it, and people were very happy about it. So there was a lot of, mixed feelings. But NASCAR has been trying actively now. They've partnered with Busch Light to do this multi-million-dollar sponsorship to get more women into the sport. They've had the Drive for Diversity program that's been hit or miss in terms of success, but to get people of color up through the ranks of NASCAR into the very top level of the Cup Series. And I think that's kind of part of what they need to continue to be doing, is to think about reaching those outside audiences. The series hosted an exhibition race this year in the Los Angeles Coliseum, which, they had Pitbull playing. It was kind of a little bit more contemporary than what you would think.
A lot of the ambassadors that go and gentlemen, start your engine, are actors like, Ryan Reynolds, or people promoting movies, or, or 50 Cent, or, I'm not saying they're not real fans. They are trying to reach out. But, I also was thinking along gender lines, not to get you overthinking on a Monday morning, but it's like, what do they say? Gentlemen, start your engines.
They used to. They've gotten more to drivers. Yeah.
Right. And I guess, I was thinking about Danica Patrick, me being the cliche advice. I guess my question is, rather than go, is it a male-dominated sport? I'm going to answer yes. Like, I think not dominated, but I think it's male-centric. Like, it's geared towards men. But I had a different question I was thinking about this morning. What would you rather see? A more integrated gender field, or a separate league, a separate series?
Yeah.
What would be your dream? What would be your dream?
It would definitely be integrated. I think the special thing about racing is that it's physical, but it doesn't rely entirely on the human body. There's an interplay with the car as well, and a car can be tuned and changed for the individual driver. So women can compete on a very equal playing field to men. They don't have to have their own series, and they've kind of tried to do that in Europe, where they've taken a lot of promising women and put them in their own series, which is fine, but there's no growth from that aspect. There's no strong plan for what happens next for those women. I think that's the big problem, is that, if you've got these separate series and you only got one, you've kind of segregated these women off into the middle of nowhere, as opposed to if you work on, putting a woman into the very bottom tier of NASCAR competition and helping her grow and evolve into the sport, you get a lot more. I think it's more valuable. You're actually helping a driver progress. You're helping a career, rather than just saying we've done something here for diversity. And you're enabling the, drivers, women and men can compete on equal terms in racing.
The question is, I think, for gender, is what's the pipeline? Like, where does a young woman's love for the sport start? Not as a lover of a fan, but as a practitioner. Because I always think, man, I should have been a NASCAR driver. Then I think, how do I get that thing? Is it a family thing? Is it a family business? Like, is it like, how you're a lover of the sport? You didn't become a practitioner of the sport, but how do we pipeline women into being practitioners? Where does that start?
It starts, most drivers nowadays are starting when they're 5 or 6 years old. They're getting behind the wheel of a go-kart and learning the craft of racing at a very, very young age. And it has to kind of start at those bottom levels. of encouraging young girls to actually realize that racing is a thing that they can do, as opposed to it being, something for their brother. And I think being able to spot the talent that women are showing and young girls are showing at a very young age, and helping encourage that as it goes. Like, there are a lot of very young women who are great racers, who are in very, in karting or in lower tiers of stock car racing or open wheel racing right now. But they're not given the support they need to move up. You need sponsorship, you need to bring money, and you need to bring value to a team. And it's hard for women to get that.
You need the Bubba Wallaces of the world, or the big names of the world. Even the Jeff Gordons who don't race anymore, but speaking up in a sense. Like,
exactly.
You need those gatekeepers. I was also looking at, this is probably, Alyssa Milano had a clothing line of NASCAR on her, like, designs. So look, I still think it's a male dominated sport. It's primarily white male dominated. Change may continue. So I got to end on some really stupid quick hitters. What movie should I watch to give the best appreciation of it? What movie does NASCAR right? Is it Days of Thunder? Is it Talladega Nights? Is it a documentary? Or is it like me just turning left at a traffic, just, the old joke, like, we're always turning left? Should I just spin around in place? What should I do? Or is there a movie I should watch to give me a sense that this is there is a new Bubba Wallace documentary that's coming out on Netflix, which is I think is going to be worth watching. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it comes out today. But if you want the cheesy aspect a little bit, Days of Thunder is kind of the way to go. You get the sense of, that was like very much of its time. The first time I watched it was a couple years ago, and I was like, this was a real movie that people watched and took seriously. But it's a lot of fun. And I think that's the thing that you need more than anything, is to realize that racing can be fun. That's how you get more fans. I agree. And if you can put up with Randy Quaid, you'll have a good time. Hey, you're awesome. And I hope you didn't feel like...
No, we're good. This is a lot of fun.
I just thought it was great. And honestly, if you think my questions were joking, you don't know how little I know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Please follow her on Twitter, because her fans are ravenous and awesome and loyal. At Eliz_Blackstock. Thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Bye. Oh my gosh. I thought I wasn't in school. Didn't I tell you that school is eternal and you learn as much as you want to know? It's like, how long is the length of string? We have an amazing group that I didn't name tag everybody. Michelle from New York jumped in for the first time. Vinny from Texas for the first time. Lincoln was here. Marley was here. Riley was here. It's like the Reading Rainbow was here. Grass Puddle, where you been? Come on, Grass Puddle. Can I call you GP? This is the one thing I didn't get enough of, Grass Puddle. Thank you, Grass Puddle. Hope to see you next time. No, I look, whenever I look at topics and learning, I think there's contrast is all, like, in the sense of, in the glibbery of asking, Grass Puddle wants to do an AMA later on Reddit. Grass Puddle, I don't know if anyone will show up for your AMA, but if you do an AMA, and I just said do, let us know. I think it's important contrast. I think you can balance humane concepts with intellectual ones. So I actually did learn a lot, and I actually didn't know anything. And I don't know if I'm a NASCAR lover, but I would watch that movie again. And this Bubba Wallace documentary sounds interesting, because Bubba's become a kind of emblem of social change, supporter of Black Lives Matter, and really challenging some of the entrenched antecedents of NASCAR. But I wanted to keep it cliche free, but in a way I am the cliche moron who knows nothing. But this was great. Do you want to go out and do a jigsaw puzzle today, or race a NASCAR? I do. I want to thank you. I want to thank Sarah, producer, for holding it down. Not even holding it down, running the damn ship. James and Renee will be back tomorrow. every day, 12 a.m., 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Shows from London, Chicago, Miami. No, not Miami. Houston. Coming up next, a show from LA with a host from the UK, Anthony Davis. The Anthony Davis Show. Later, your pal Hal. All the Mouseketeers every day. Happy President's Day. Happy Palindrome Day. Give something to somebody, then take it back. That's a palindrome-like gift as well. I want to thank you. I can't wait for James and Renee to come back, as you can't either. Maybe I'll see you in another show at another time with another list of segments that I know nothing about, and I'll try to keep it to 2 hours. Thank you, everybody, for being with us here on Get On Up Backchannel. More to come. Anthony Davis. Have a great Monday. Have a great week. Be healthy. Safe travels. Adios.